Hello, guys. This is a review of the movie American Heart. I know it's been a while since I reviewed a movie, but here we are at last. This movie follows the story of Jack, played by Jeff Bridges, and Nick, played by Edward Furlong. This is a very strong movie, very emotional, very captivating. Let's talk a little bit about the plot and then I'll get into my opinions about the film afterwards. So, Jack is fresh off of prison, 5 years in prison, and he's welcomed by his 14-year-old son, Nick. It's very, it's even crazy to explain. So, Jack is released, and from the get go, he's trying to get Nick off of his back. He's like, "Oh, go to the diner, and I'll meet you there. Here, have some money. I'll meet you there." I don't like. Maybe they did mention it. I was having a bit of trouble understanding the dialogue between them because they use a very heavy accent, and I usually play movies with subtitles, but this time they weren't available. This is a pretty old movie, even though it was released on DVD. So I struggled. So there were a few maybe key points that I could have possibly missed. But I think it still works nonetheless. It's still effective. Um, Even though you don't get much of a backstory. I know that he's trying to get Nick to go back with his sister, but his sister's like, I don't even want him. But obviously, Nick wants to be with his dad. It's something that I don't really understand 100%, but I guess it's like the only direct family member that he has. His mother died, I'm pretty sure. I only watched this movie once, so please cut me some slack. I wanted to rewatch it, and I didn't want a lot of time to go on between having watched it for the first time and reviewing it, but it happened that way. It's only like a week, since I watched it. Anyway, they go to the dangerous parts of Seattle where there's a lot of crime, a lot of drug use and prostitution, and he's Nick is sticking to Jack like a chewed gum on a shoe. He's not leaving his side, and they start anew. Everything seems to be going all right for a while, even though Nick is still hesitant to keep him with him. But he finds a job cleaning windows. At first, he's super scared of the heights. The window washers that that clean the windows and on tall buildings and stuff. But they get acclimated, they start getting to know each other and start to develop a bond. In the meantime, though, Nick makes an effort to enroll in school, but he doesn't have transcripts, he doesn't have his vaccine card, so he's not able to get into the school. So he starts hanging out with the wrong crowd, quote unquote, these teenagers that really have a lot of time in their hands and they're not using it very wisely. They're smoking, they're pushing each other around, and like I don't want to sound like a square, like, oh, they're bad teenagers, bad influences, but they obviously, the streets are no place for kids that age. They're no place for anyone really, but as an adult you can make calculated decisions that take you to wherever you do want to go, or if you want to just live your life consuming substances, but you make that decision as an adult. It's different when you're a kid and you're being manipulated and stuff like that. But like I said, he makes his group of friends. He falls in love with this girl right here. Hopefully you could see her, and she is also working as a prostitute. Her mother works at a brothel. I think it's a brothel. I don't know. It's like they don't have these anymore, I don't think, but it's one of, like, let's say a strip club, but I think a lot more goes on in that strip club than like strip clubs in current times. Um, but yeah, you could imagine that there's a lot of trouble with a lot of problems with Nick falling in love with that girl who isn't necessarily looking to settle down with. She's looking for money. That's what she wants. And Nick catches on to what she does and stuff. And throughout the movie he's like, hey, you don't have to do that, this and that. And she says, I have to, it's, for money. um they pay better. And actually she ends up dancing literally in a room full of like frat brothers, and like, you know, you could imagine it's just crazy. There's I think everything goes in like levels when it comes to these type of things. There's like, if selling, I guess, pictures of your feet online is one thing, and then doing lives with other people is another thing, and then filming adult movies is another thing, and then, it all goes like that. And she's made her way from the beginning to what was available then, because the internet wasn't really a thing, to all the way to just blown out. You could, I think you get the point. Nick, in the process of trying to tell her that he loves her or something like that, trying to express or make it known that he's interested in her, he steals shoes for her. He is starting to steal. I forgot to mention a very important point. A former, we could say, teammate of Jack's, he's still obviously in the business of robbing and doing illegal things. He tries to get Jack to get back in the game with him. He was the one who taught him everything. He was like, dude, no, it's not how you think. Like, that got me incarcerated, and it sucks, and it's not a good thing. So then he shifts the attention on Nick, and he takes advantage of the fact that Nick is going through a tough time with his dad. It's Everything is so crazy. So there's a lot of things that happen, and I'm not going in chronological order because I keep going back and forth. I'm sorry. But honestly, you have to watch it. Like, I'm just doing this to kind of like, get myself back in the movie, tell you a little bit what it's about, even though I assume you already watched it, but also to for the feelings to come back again, because I was feeling a lot of things while watching the film. There's a moment. Oh yeah, I was gonna mention Jack's dream is to go to Alaska to start anew. Obviously, somebody who's been in prison and doesn't know, doesn't have any special abilities. Like, he's not into carpentry, he's not into plumbing, he doesn't know how to do anything. He says that to his one of the officers that he speaks to, and his dream is just to go there, breathe some fresh air, live a different life, be unknown. And Nick wants to go with him. So at first, obviously, he didn't want that, but then eventually he did. He caught on to it and started building, like I said, that bond. So they started saving up money. And Nick at first was selling newspapers. He wasn't stealing to get money. So he was helping out. But then the guy that was teammates with Jack, he, after being like just told no, which that should suffice, like, go away. He went inside their apartment and robbed them of all their savings, and then got Nick to start stealing houses, starting, like I said, with the prostitution thing. First, oh, you're just gonna keep watch, oh, if you go in you're gonna get more money, and then blah 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 blah. So it comes to a point where Nick invites his best friend, one of the guys that he met in the streets, to go rob a house. But the owner comes in with his son, and his son screams. So the Nick's friend has a gun, and he's pointing at him. But obviously, he's just a young guy. He's inexperienced. He doesn't have the nerve to shoot. So the father takes it and accidentally pulls a trigger, and a bullet goes through Nick's friend's chest. So he escapes, and he's obviously panicking. At that point, he was living in the streets because he got into a very, very heavy argument with his dad, because his dad has a drinking problem also, and doesn't know how to handle it, and how to keep his tongue in check when he's under the influence of that. So it gets really crazy, but then Jack does whatever he can to catch up with his son and explain to him, oh, it's going to be all right. These things happen. You can't stay. That already happened, and it sucks. But we're just going to move on. We're going to move forward. At that point, he confesses that it was that dude that his dad used to work with, to his dad, and then he obviously wants revenge. He says, we're going to leave. Let's go. Oh, and oh my gosh, let me just finish this thought. So that happens, and he buys him a ticket on a ship, and they're gonna leave. But before that, obviously Jack feels like he has to get revenge, so he goes and beats up the guy that recruited his son, and then he beats him up and takes back his money. But the guy's like, obviously, hey, no. So he gets a gun and starts chasing him around the streets. They run, they run, they run, and then they cut to a scene where you see that guy shooting Jack, but you don't see what happens. And then Nick is in the on the ship all alone. He's like looking out, like, where's my dad? He said he was gonna meet up with me. He's probably thinking, I assume, that, oh my gosh, maybe he just left me. He ditched me. But then he finds him sitting somewhere on the deck, wounded, and he tells him there's going to be a lot of people that tell you you can't do things, but know that you could live a different life. You really could. I get goosebumps, goosebumps. I'm being so dramatic, but it's honestly one of the best movies in its category. It's really, really good. Something that I forgot to mention in the beginning is that Jack, while in prison, he was writing letters, and I didn't understand how this began in the first place, but he was writing letters to this woman that he was obviously interested in. And then when he came out, he found out where she hung out and started, flirting with her. And I guess they had a connection. They fell in love, and then he was like, oh, you got a boyfriend? She was like, yeah. And he was like, that's me. That's me, who you've been writing letters to. And they start this pretty um, wholesome relationship that even allowed for Jack to have this kind of family image around. And even though you'd assume that there's going to be a lot of problems, and at first there was a little bit, um, a bit of apprehension, but Nick started warming up to the idea of them together. And the woman that Jack was in love with, she was all game for him to be around his son. And she also gave him a lot of pointers in terms of, don't blame it all on him. He has a lot going on, and maybe you could have done a lot more for him so that he wouldn't have eloped. So that's the plot. Like I said, this movie, I bought it at the infamous FYE. Actually, they opened a store in my local mall, at my local mall. I just realized that like a month or two ago, so I'm pretty pleased, but it's still not the same as the one that I used to go at Fullerton. Go to at Fullerton, sorry. Um, I picked it out. I was just like, okay, American Heart, it's interesting. Oh, one of their lines that the dad and the son say, well, the dad to the son, he's always like, you keep me straight, I keep you straight. Oh, it's amazing. I read the back while at the store, and then I was like, hey, this seems like something that I like. I like movies from like the 80s, early 90s, where they have like, this quality to them. Like they actually try to send a message and reflect real life scenarios without the glitz and glamour and everything, all the nonsense that movies, I feel, nowadays have to have for them to be noticed by the public. This had that, and like I said, judging from just this, it feels like I really want to know what's going on. Like I'm very nosy on like what went on in their lives. Like why is he chasing him around? Why doesn't he want his son to follow him? I didn't know that it was gonna be like so extreme to the point where he's like, hey, go to the diner and I'll meet you there, and then not really going taking the bus. Um, but that's what it was, and I was not disappointed at all. There are some funny moments, like when when Nick steals the shoes. This might be offensive, well, but I take no offense. I mean, I can't tell you to take no offense, but just like obviously, if you watch my reviews, you know that I don't cater just to like kid audiences or just adults. Like I go all around, but I always speak my mind. Try to keep it PG-13, but just a warning out there. When he comes back with the shoes, he's like, where do you get these? Where do you get? He's like, I don't know, he said something that it's kind of like you assume that they're for him. He's like, are you a fruiter? And I don't know why, I've never heard that in my life. So it was just really funny for me. He was like, no, I bought them for, like, I got them for her, the girl that he's in love with. It's so crazy. It has some moments like that, but for the most part, it's, very serious, very nice. I didn't really mention it while I was describing what happened, but I was not happy with the ending. I guess now, in retrospect, I can accept it a little more because there are a lot of lessons about the hard life in the streets. By the way, this movie was inspired by Streetwise, a documentary film from the 80s. The person that worked on that film worked on this one as well. I forget their name, sorry. But yeah, I was very, very annoyed. I was like, they better not kill him. Or at first I was like, the worst thing that could happen is that the guy actually shoots him and he just dies on the spot and never makes it to the boat. And then Nick is just left there thinking, my dad ditched me again. Like, I would have hated that. I don't even know what I would have done, but I was so, so mad at just the thought of that. I didn't even want to contemplate Nick feeling like he was abandoned once more. Um, but that didn't happen, thankfully. He actually saw his dad, which was, to me, was, and I was like, okay, they could save him, they could save him. But the minute that the dad was like, no, don't go get help, like, just stay with me, don't leave, I was like, okay, it's going downhill from here. I know what time it is. Um, I didn't cry, and I didn't really get a feeling that I wanted to cry. I think it was because the feeling of anger towards him possibly dying overpowered everything else near the end. But like I said, I made peace with it. Like, I'm a little more accepting of that. I guess it had to happen. And I just hope that Nick, in this imaginary world of films, he found his way, because this, represents a lot of situations, I think. So that basically is me speaking on my wishes for these people. You really could live a different life. There are times, for example, when I've heard of these things. I haven't necessarily lived through them, but there are cases where you have a family, mom or dad, or maybe just a dad, or maybe just a mom, whatever, and they abuse, drugs and alcohol. They're really, really down in the dirt, and one of their kids follows the same thing, and then the other one, like, gets an education, gets a good job, or maybe doesn't, like, end up being a lawyer or whatever, but he's, living a clean life and being, um to the extent that he can, um a healthy person, and a person that enjoys living and seizes the day. And it sounds very corny and everything, but you could imagine how a person, a daughter or son, or a kid, could blame their own, their own lives, their own decisions on the decisions of their parents. But like I said, you could have, for example, let's say, I don't know, I I'm kind of blanking out right now, but you get the point. You make the point is that you make your own decisions. Your parents might be morbidly obese, like to a point where they can't get out of bed. You need to help them, and they don't have any um this serious disease that prohibits their recuperation. They just decide to eat very bad and not exercise. And then you see that, and you could get, your own motivation to not be like that, to take, that, hey, I want to walk here, I want to walk there. If I have legs, if I am able, then I want to be capable of doing that. And then you have other people that are like, no, but it's all I saw. And I sympathize. Yes, okay. I know that it's hard, and if you do end up taking the path that your parents took and it's a bad path, and I always quote unquote bad, because one can never really say, but if you do take the path that makes you live an unhealthy lifestyle and a dangerous lifestyle at that, I'm not like pointing the finger saying it's all your fault. No, obviously it had to do with um your surroundings, but at the same time, I feel like Nick could definitely learn from the mistakes that his dad made, and from the few lessons that he was able to teach him, and from seeing him, under the influence of alcohol and stuff like that. But yeah, I went a lot into detail because that's kind of why I love this movie. I have to talk about real life scenarios because that's what movies do for me. Sometimes if I'm watching something like Avatar, okay, fine, I have fun watching the blue creatures and the pretty little flowers. It's nice, but I also want a little bit of, or a lot of, um, raw emotion, and, like I said earlier, a representation of what's going on in the real world. Can I identify with them directly in their relationship with my own father? I can't directly, apply every single thing that happened, or the main thing, which was the dad coming out of jail and trying to initiate a life and his son following him. I didn't live through that, but I take bits and pieces. For example, I was a very, we could say, needy child. I was always like, ma'am, look, look, look. I was that kid, like, let's go here, let's go here. And like, I would go they would be like, later, later. So I would be like, now, daddy, could we go now? And then like 15 minutes later, what about now? So I identify in that sense. I don't think I would have had the grit to actually, if I was in that situation, to really follow my dad. If I had like an aunt like he had, or anything else, like I would rather be with like that, because I don't know, I just wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have the strength and the determination to be like, I'm gonna be with you because you are my dad, whether you like it or not. uh, but there's just a lot of things, this movie, there's a lot of things to comment on, a lot of things that I probably forgot to mention and that were very important, at least to me. But obviously, I can't remember everything from having watched the movie a single time. But I think I said the main things. The main thing, I guess, for me, in order to cure my broken heart from the death of Jack, is, like I said, if you're in a situation where you think that everything is against you, you could find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way, as the saying goes. And I really and like I said earlier as well, if you don't end up taking the path to a better life, if you just feel like you're you're still dependent on alcohol, let's say, or you're in an abusive relationship and you feel like you just can't leave, there's sympathy from me to you. But when you rate when you hit rock bottom, when you get to that place in your life where you're contemplating heavily, when you're like, I see the window, I see the light, can I reach it? I'm like, watch movies like this, you can reach it, you definitely can. It's all up to you. And it's obviously a much rougher path if everything seems to be against you, but like I said, you'll find a way. And anyway, that this really took a turn, but like I said, I just had to apply it to real life. It's what I do. My rating for this movie would be 10 out of 10. I would say, I have to say 10 out of 10 in its category strictly. And I would recommend it to anyone who wants to watch it. Mature audiences, obviously, because this is not a movie for kids. And that's it for this one. Thank you for watching.